The truth about radicalization in India. Why is it so difficult to talk about those who are really poisoning minds? Radicalization of minds is a reality in India. The claim by the Indian agencies of having busted ISI terror modules has led G.S. Bojpai and Ankit Kaushik to believe that the threat of radicalization in India is pervasive and increasing exponentially before they cross the line, i.e., October 29. The situation, according to them, is quite serious and demands a policy response from the government. We have, however, seen multiple terror cases brought by the security agencies that have failed to stand in the courts, often after years of the accused being incarcerated under the UAPA. It is, therefore, not wrong to expect experts to examine the claims by the state agencies with skepticism. That aside, the author's concern should not be brushed aside. Radicalization of minds is a reality in India. There are different kinds of radicals in our midst: believers in the dictatorship of the proletariat replacing multi-party democracy, or in the idea of a world ruled by Sharia, or in the thought of India being a land primarily of Hindus, with others having lesser rights. The challenge is to describe the Indian reality of radicalization. It appears that the writers hold the belief propagated by the agencies that the sources of radicalization lie outside the boundaries of India, ISIS, or Al-Qaeda being most prominent. Speaking plainly, when we look at radicalization from this lens, we tend to focus on Muslims. Looking at a government-sanctioned research project to understand the phenomenon of radicalization in India led by Bojpai himself, one finds that his assumption is not very different. For example, the study will be conducted in 4 states like Maharashtra, Assam, Kerala and Jammu and Kashmir. One can only guess the religious profile of the 75 radicalized individuals to be sampled from these states. The reason for such sampling and formulations is that only those acts are considered radical which are dramatic, have a suddenness about them, involve bombs or firearms like AK-47s, and involve groups acting in the name of Islam. The ISIS law is real, but can the demonstrators terrorizing Muslims offering namaz on the open ground in Gurgaon without using any weapon be seen as radicals? Are those who assembled at Jantar Mantar calling openly for the elimination of Muslims radicalized? In which category should those middle-class Hindus be placed who assembled to oppose the opening of a shop in Anand to terrorize Hindu partners into dropping their Muslim friend from the partnership? What about the groups across India terrorizing Hindu-Muslim couples? Such acts have become so numerous and routine that they no longer excite us enough to find them radical. Yet, if we agree with Bojpai, it is the extent of violence that radicalization leads to which makes it dangerous. That is why we need to look at the sources of radicalization and disable them. Can we describe the process and identify the sources of such radicalization, which has turned into a violent threat in India? Can it be treated as pervasive and exponential, demanding an extraordinary response? Recently, a video started circulating on social media platforms in which some students can be heard telling the reporter that Kashmiris were being fed better rice and had been exempt from paying income tax, that the Indian constitution was not applicable there and the removal of Article 370 has corrected all these anomalies. They also believed that demonetization had stopped stone pelting. Should we laugh this away, as a case of benign misinformation, or see it as a stage in the process of radicalization, which will make them justify violence against Kashmiris, or even take part in it? What about the people in your families who believe that Muslims conspire to send their handsome men to lure Hindu girls? Or those who sincerely believe that the Muslim threat is driving Hindus away from many localities, like Kairana? Or that Muslims are growing in numbers or people being converted to Christianity to outnumber Hindus? These beliefs lead people to participate in violence against Muslims and Christians or condone it. Should we treat such minds as radicalized or misguided? Yet, we know that in India, it is this mind which is the cause for daily, continuous violence. It is not difficult to find the sources of this radicalization. In a recent public meeting in Delhi, A journalist shared his experience with children attending an ISS Shaka. When he first met them, they told him that Gandhi was their ideal, but after a gap of 2 months, he had been replaced with Savarkar. Was it merely a harmless replacement of one ideal person by another one, or also a change in the ideology, from non-violence to violence, from India for all to India primarily for Hindus? Is this radicalization or not? When the senior government and political leaders tell Hindus that their women are under threat because of certain people, or their roads are taken by namazes, they are radicalizing Hindus. In the same way Donald Trump was doing in the US. After he departed from office, the threat of radicalization in America was assessed and defined differently. Farah Pandith writes about the way the Biden administration is trying to deal with the challenge of radicalization. It promises to create a better understanding of the domestic terrorism threat, using data to inform threat assessments and enhance sharing across the interagency. It calls for a ramping up of so-called prevention, seeking to challenge extremism's enduring ability to poison vulnerable minds and communities. It emphasizes the central role played by law enforcement, seeking recommendations from the Department of Justice on areas to be improved and built, and it promises to tackle long-term contributors to escalating domestic extremism, not least long-standing racism and conspiracy theories demonizing others. What is our domestic threat? Who is poisoning vulnerable minds and communities here? Is it so difficult to talk about it?